Hello everyone, this is Svetlana. Welcome to another Altenew video. Today I will be working with the Build a Flower Fluorescent Zinnia set. This set has 4 layering stems to create a very beautiful and realistically looking zinnia flower. For my card today, I will only be stamping the flower from this set. So I made a panel out of a solar white cardstock and placed it into my mini MISTI. Using a stamp positioning tool isn't required for this technique, but of course it makes the life much easier, especially when we work with layering stamps. So I'm starting stamping the flower. I'm placing the bottom layer onto the panel and then mounting it to the MISTI lid. For stamping, I will be using orange ink from the Altenew Warm and Cozy set. This set is my absolute favorite when I make fall cards. Speaking of which, I totally forgot to mention, this card I'm making with fall in mind, of course, as the season currently in its full glory. Okay, so I'm stamping the layers of the flowers using the orange inks from lighter to darker. Here you can see that I'm kind of swiping the ink pad along the stem. I'm using the mini cube set for stamping, and the stamps in this set are rather big. So it takes more effort to cover a stamp using these mini pads versus using bigger oval ink pads. And what is more important, you can miss some spots when work with bigger stamps. So this way I'm adding kind of a base ink coat by swiping an ink pad and then even out the ink coverage by tapping with the same ink pad. It's quite important to do tapping after swiping, otherwise you will get a funny swiped pattern when stamp. Well, unless you are going for this look. I will show you later in the video that effect that you get when you just swipe an ink pad along the stamp. And for the very top layer, I'm using the jet black dye ink. Next, I will be making a mask for this flower. Masking can be intimidating for many of you, but for this card I will be doing a lazy mask by cutting it out of a masking paper using the matching dye for this flower. So now I'm using the negative die cut of the mask to position the mask centered onto the flower. As I made the mask using the die, which is a bit bigger than the stamped image, it can be tricky to apply it perfectly centered onto the flower, and as you don't see what is underneath. So I'm using this negative die cut kind of as a guide. I found the position so the stamped image inside of it is evenly in the middle. Then I'm securing this guide with some tape and inserting the mask inside. And next I will go ahead and stamp the same flower to the top left of already stamped one. I made the second mask also by cutting it out of the masking paper, and I'm applying it the same way onto the second stamped flower. And after that I'm moving on to stamping the next flower, or the same flower but the third time. Here, as I already have 2 masks applied, I need to apply more pushing power onto the MISTI lid. As the masks create kind of a barrier and prevent stamp to reach the cardstock right next to the mask edges. Okay, here is that moment when I swiped the ink pad along the stamp and forgot to do tapping. You can see how stamping looks in this case. So I'm restamping it, this time applying the ink properly. Even though I only stamped like a third of the flower onto non-masked area, I still apply ink onto the whole stamp. Some parts of the stamp layers which are located on masks are used to align one layer along another. So here, to stamp the next flower, I cannot fit the stamp where I wanted to be, and I was too lazy to grab the bigger MISTI. So instead I decided to trim the panel. As in the card design that I planned, I will only be using 3 inches or so anyways. Now, here the stamp partially is outside of the panel, and I'm placing it such way that this petal that is important for layering following stamps will be located on the panel. Now I'm proceeding with stamping this flower. I'm not getting into details of stamping itself, as it's pretty straightforward, and I just don't want the video to be forever long. Now I come to the point when I need to stamp one more flower to fill up the panel. I'm using a mask from another flower, as it doesn't need to be masked off on this point. And here comes the most exciting part of this video, is removing the masks. There are not much things in the world as satisfying as this moment. I have one small area not covered with stamping, but I decided not to go very crazy stamping onto it. Instead, I'm just trimming it off. To finish off the card, I for mounting the panel onto a white card base. And I popped a sentiment white embossed on a black stripe onto the panel. Lastly, I'm adding several clear droplets as finishing touches. And here is my finished project. I needed masking in general, as I wanted to create a continuous stamping of this floral pattern. And there were two reasons I decided to go with the lazy masking. First of all, because it's lazy, of course. With the time spent on layering stamping, saving it in the masking sector is kind of big. And also I wanted to have this white border around the flowers to kind of differentiate one from another. This set doesn't have an outline stamp, and without it the flowers stamped one kind of behind another would blend together as one piece. Which would be beautiful too, of course, because this flower is very beautiful. But in this case I wanted to have some borders. And this would be it for today. Thank you so much for watching. It was Svetlana. Have a wonderful day. Bye.